Hey, stand up straight. Come on. It's not that difficult. And maybe it is for you. Well, this one. Hey, everybody. I'm Ricardo, and today we're going to be making soil for our bucket garden. As you can see, I've got a lot of rim protectors on. I got the bucket set. So we're ready to make soil and start planting. And this is a friend of mine. Stick in the parking lot. We're in Los Angeles, there's not much mud, so we can't be sticking in the mud. But he's just so I can make sure that I'm in the video as opposed to being halfway cut off. So we're going to go over the tools and the materials, and we're going to get started. You just lean there for a second, buddy. I'll be right back. For tools, fairly simple. And I've adjusted it so I can make a lot of it because I've got 20 buckets to fill. I need a mixing bin, a 1 gallon container, this is 5 quarts, which is fine, a measuring cup, dust mask. Now the dust mask, peat moss and lime are very, very powdery, and it gets up into your nose. Lime burns a little bit. Peat moss just fills it, and you're going to be blowing brown stuff for a while. Garden gloves and rubber gloves. Now I use these because I'm going to put peat moss, lime, and water in here and mix it up, and I just don't want to get it all over my hands. That's the tools. Now we're going to go over and check out the materials. There was one tool I forgot to tell you about, and I thoroughly enjoy. Knee pad. Not real lovable in the color, but it's a knee pad. All right, the materials. When I go out for a walk a couple of days a week, I take leaves with me. Wednesdays is a good day for me to collect leaves in my neighborhood. There is a video on where to collect organic material in the city. So I got leaves. Now there's 2 categories for the leaves. Full leaves for mulch, and then I crush them up to mix into my bin to have organic material inside the soil. Then I've got steer manure, lime, and organic fertilizer, perlite, vermiculite, this is a big bag of perlite, and peat moss. I used to use sand in my soil mixture, and it just seemed to pack down too tight, and it was way, way too heavy. So after investigating through a number of websites of commercial growers and a couple of universities on how to build soil from pots, I decided to take the sand out and add vermiculite and perlite and use the base for of seed roots of the peat moss. We'll just leave out the seed root. Sounds so much like whiskey. The other ingredient I add is topsoil. Now you can buy a bag of topsoil, but I'm changing out all the soil at my bucket garden at my apartment. So I'm bringing them over and I'm going to dump them out. I'm going to use that soil because they have worms in them. They have all the microorganisms in them they need. And I will use that as part of the soil mixture. On the cheat sheet, you'll see a full recipe for the soil mixture I'm using now. For years, I used to use more soil. Now I'm switching over to peat moss and vermiculite with a little bit of soil manure and these other things to make it a little lighter, to less compact, to make it healthier. I want my plants to flourish. So, we're about ready to get started. One last thing. You can see that the soil is on a piece of plywood, kind of spread out. It's drying, but I'm doing is I'm trying to drive the worms down so that I can use the soil, trying to find out how many worms I'm going to be putting into each bucket. We want about minimum 20, 50 is better. So in this process, when we get to this point, go ahead and order your worms. I've ordered 200, 300 worms for a 10 bucket run. These worms in here, they're diving down. I'll have a good idea how many worms are in that one. I have 2 other buckets that I'm going to be emptying out. One of them is my compost bucket. Now, you want to, now there's 2 trains of thought on what to do with your worms when you get them from Jim's Worm Farm. One, train of thought is to divide them up between your buckets, and that's good. Going on at least 20 to 50 to start. The other train of thought is to put them all in your compost bucket and let them really start activating, because they have to be together for them to produce worm sacs, worm eggs, which will then have some worms. And it'll take a couple of months. So you want to start out one way or the other. I started out putting all my worms in one bucket, and that was my compost bucket. And then as I took out the material that was being made, the soil, I knew you actually see the worms in it, and that would go into each bucket. I'd take out a handful, put it in there, and then I put in a handful of the kitchen scraps that came out of my kitchen that will feed the worms, and worms will gravitate towards new food. You got to have the microorganisms in your soil to break down everything so the worms have something to eat. And that's it. So as that's drying, I'm going to start mixing up some soil, and then we'll start doing some planting. Yeah, love it. 3 gallons. So this is fairly large granular, so we're definitely going to have to get some water on it. So now we got the lime and peat moss together. We need the lime to bring the peat moss pH up, but it's going to take a month or two for it to all counteract. So this is a general amount we put in. One university said a quarter cup, one university said half a cup. But the second university was saying that peat mosses, even out of the same bog, will have different pH levels because of the height and the type of material, and just all these different factors. So I'm going to go with a quarter cup because I don't want to go over too much. And we're going to put some water in here now, and then mix this up because we want the lime to mix with the peat moss before we add the rest of the ingredients. So let me get a gallon of water. 1 gallon of water. Peat moss is notorious for not getting or absorbing water. So we got to kind of mix it around. We want the lime to start dissolving. So I'll be back in a moment. To protect this glove from getting holes in it from the sticks in the soil, I just put my cotton work glove over it. My hands don't get the lime on it, and the cotton keeps the sticks from puncturing the gloves. Works pretty good. Okay, the peat moss is starting to capture that moisture and starting to ball up a little bit. And the lime is pretty much dissolving, but it's going to stick to the peat moss where it needs to go. If I put the lime in with all the other ingredients, the lime may go to things we don't need lime for, like the steer manure or the vermiculite or perlite. We want it on the peat moss. So we got to do 2 gallons of crushed leaves, 2 gallons of soil, and those have that's the microorganisms and the worms in that. If you're buying bagged soil, try to get a clean organic bag of topsoil, not something that's got a bunch of sticks in it. And then we need a gallon of perlite, a gallon of vermiculite, quarter cup of fertilizer, and a gallon of steer manure. I'm going to go ahead and get things started. In my travels, I did click in my walk as I collecting leaves. I ended up with one of my bins that had a lot of grass clippings in it. So I got grass clippings in here. Now I'm doing a crushed leaf. You don't have to crush the leaves, but I like crushing it so that they break down faster and there won't be so much compression as the worms eat them. One gallon crushed leaves. So I've got my peat moss, my lime, my crushed leaves, 2 gallons of organic material, crushed leaves, and the grass clippings. Grab my notes. Now I'm going to need 2 gallons of soil. So I got soil over there kind of drying out. I'll grab 2 gallons of that and I'll bring it in and put it in. 1 gallon. Second gallon. So that's 2 gallons of soil. And then we need a gallon of perlite. Gallon of perlite. One gallon of vermiculite. Got to open up the bag. One gallon vermiculite. You can see the difference between the perlite and vermiculite. Now we need a gallon of steer manure. 1 gallon steer manure. Last ingredient is 1 cup of fertilizer. There it is. I'm sorry, 1/4 cup of fertilizer. That may not sound like a lot of fertilizer, but you will be adding fertilizer throughout the year. And we'll talk about that later. Notes down. Now I gotta get to work. Gotta mix this all up. We got bucket garden soil now. So all I have to do is start planting. Now if you don't have worm soil from a previous bucket garden, and with all the microorganisms in it, protozoa, the fungi, don't worry about it. When you get your worms, they will have enough bacteria in their intestines to start putting out those microorganisms that are necessary. The steer manure probably doesn't have any because they have to be, I think it's 2 years they have to sit to kill off all the seeds and all the other bacteria. And everything else is pretty much bland. There may be some bacteria in the leaves and grass clippings you collect, but don't worry about it. Just start building. So, that's it. That's how we make soil. That's a lot of work, but the payoff is going to be really, really good. So I'll see you in the next video where we start planting plants. Bucket Run, Jim's Farms. I think you can buy 2 packs of 100 each, and I get them home. Put them all in one bucket. I know there's 2 ways to control. Once you get to this point, go ahead and order your worms. And there are 2 ways of airplanes. Hi. No garden glove protection. Now the water, lime that I mix it, now no protection. The water that I use in mixing my soil has lime in it. You know, get on my hands. This is not good. I had to get new gloves. But they're easy to drain.